I never wanted to be someone up here on an Ivy League pedestal going to grad school and looking down saying, oh, I'm up here. How can I help you down there? I wanted to say, what's up? Like, what are you doing? What's going on with you? How can I use the platform I might have to be able to share exactly what you're saying and going really to the people that are experiencing it the most? Because for me, it's not necessarily like my research is in mass incarceration, and it wasn't necessarily that was something that deeply impacted my life growing up, but it was understanding, especially the wave of the Black Lives Matter movement in 2020, really understanding the ways in which racism and mass incarceration are inextricably tied and wanting to learn more about that. It really just comes from like, I always loved school. I always loved learning, and that ability to just learn and hear people's stories. That's kind of what really drew me in and brought me from, this is my experience to, oh, this is something that I really want to talk more about.
Welcome back to another episode of the Mile 40 podcast. Thank you all for continuing to tune in. It's been quite a ride, and we are getting closer and closer to episode 100, which is just crazy. I know I mentioned it before, but I'm incredibly thankful for you all for continuing to tune in. Like I do on every show, I'm going to ask you, if you haven't already, please be sure to hit subscribe if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Check out the show notes. There's a discount code for picking up a copy of Audacious or Break Barriers. It would mean the world to me, and I really appreciate your support. Today's guest is a very special guest, and I'm excited to introduce her. I have Taylor Ray Almonte-Brown. She's a Brooklyn-based host, creator, athlete, and activist. Her social impact work meets at the intersection of racial justice and wellness. After almost a decade as a professional boxing and strength trainer, Taylor co-founded Activism, an anti-racism wellness company that amplifies marginalized voices and educates their allies. She has worked professionally as a diversity, equity, and inclusion educator and led training and programs for companies like Starbucks, ClassPass, Rumble, Reebok, and more. Alongside this, she has leveraged her social media platforms to create major campaigns for fitness and lifestyle brands. She's currently an FP Movement ambassador. Her career highlights include presenting for the Reebok Human Rights Award, a feature on the cover of Self magazine, co-authoring Active Aiding Your Vocabulary, a book on having tough conversations about race and racism. Taylor is currently pursuing her master's at Columbia at the Institute of the Study of Human Rights with a concentration on mass incarceration. Her research on access to outdoor recreation and exercise for women of color in New York correctional facilities. Lastly, she utilizes her unique skill set to empower, mobilize those who are most vulnerable as she advocates for lasting change. Her podcast, On the Outside, launched in January of this year. Taylor, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Believe it or not, I cut your bio a little bit, but there were just so many good tidbits in there that I had to make sure that I kept. And so thank you for sharing that background with us. And I'm excited to have you on today. As I was just going through your bio, there are so many moving parts to it. Number one, the fact that you come from the fitness industry, the health and wellness space, which, is at the heart of Mile 40. But more so the fact that it seems like you've been a voice for those who need it the most in different areas of life. And that's something that I really want to make sure that we harp on today and get an understanding of how you decided to make being an advocate for all these people such an important part of your journey. So why don't we kick things off with just a little bit background on yourself, where you grew up, childhood, just so we get to know you a little bit personally.
Yeah, of course. So I grew up in New Jersey. I grew up in Brick by the shore, and both my parents are immigrants. They came when they were really young. My dad from Dominican Republic and my mom from Puerto Rico. And growing up, I had a very close relationship with my parents, still do. Like, shout out my mom in every single podcast interview I ever do. So let's get out the way now and let me just shout out my mom. I grew up in literally the least athletic person that you ever met in your life, like ever. Like, I had a perpetual note to be out of gym class for pretty much all of high school. I absolutely hated all sort of sports, like never was athletic for a second, which I think is always really funny that I've gotten to the point in my life now that I would have never expected this when I was a kid. Let's just say that. And always loved performing arts. I ended up going to NYU and getting my undergrad degree at Tisch for musical theater, was an actor for several years. And like, I think that's always been a strong foundation to who I am today, having that acting background. Absolutely loved acting, but ultimately, the life of an actor is hard. It is tough. It is like rejection every day of your life. And couldn't do it, but kind of simultaneously found my passion for sports alongside my adult career as an actor. And I think that kind of like catapulted me to where I am today. But growing up, what's also at the heart of that experience is I grew up in a predominantly white community and I was constantly bullied for whether it was my hair, whether it was my skin color, whether it was what my parents were packing me for lunch. It was just always a constant reminder that I felt like an outsider. I felt like someone that just didn't fit in. And I think that also has really shaped my passion for exactly what you were saying before, my desire to advocate for those that feel most marginalized. And that's also kind of something that I was always grappling with growing up. And that, I mean, I continue to think about today, which really inspired me to, follow that path as well.
Thanks for giving us that background. That's super insightful. Couple quick questions for you. I know that there's definitely a big parallel between the acting field and the fitness field, especially when people are up and coming in New York. Where do you think that derives from, or why is that the case? I mean, I remember when I was younger in New York, and I used to go to all these workouts, and the instructors, most of them were actors on the side. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's so true. For me, I was doing the Broadway national tour of Motown, the musical. And while I was on tour, I mean, nothing is consistent. You're in a different city. Like sometimes I wouldn't even know what state or city I was in. And what I really found was working out. Every hotel had a gym. That was kind of where I found like a place to ground myself and center myself. And that's kind of where my fitness journey, sport athlete journey began. And then coming back to New York, actors have what we call a survival job, which is kind of the thing you do that you kind of like alongside acting, always waiting for the next gig, the next audition, the next job. My survival job was at the front desk of a bar studio. Wasn't even trying to be an instructor whatsoever, was just doing front desk, but slowly started to love it. They asked me if I wanted to be an instructor. I started auditioning at different studios. That's kind of what led me personally there. But I think it's like a lot of times, especially today, being a group fitness instructor, especially more than I would say like a one on one coach, but being group fitness instructor, you're kind of performing. Like my role was usually on a stage, on a podium with your Britney Spears like headset microphone on. And I think that's also what appeals to a lot of actors because you have that kind of like performer quality in a lot of these classes now, which is, I mean, honestly, super fun.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, people are now buying into the instructors more so than the class. We see it all the time. Just look at the Peloton instructors. They've all become celebrities in
Yeah,
their own right.
absolutely.
And at the end of the day, they're putting on a show, behind the cameras. And that's just one example. It's the same idea in a studio. And so, that leads me to my next question. It sounds like when you were going into the acting world and when you were at Tish, you had already kind of found your voice. Am I right on that? Did I get a good read? I want to kind of get into, when did Taylor find her voice, whether it was as an individual or as an advocate?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And it's honestly something that I've thought about a lot. I think there were a ton of different moments throughout my life that I felt really empowered in my voice. My mom will send me like old Facebook posts that it was like on this day 10 years ago or 15 years ago, like something that I wrote. And I think I always had that in me. It was always something that would come out at different moments and times. But I don't think I really felt super grounded in who I am and what I wanted to do until around 2020, 2021. That was when I decided to go back to grad school or go back to school in the form of grad school because I really felt, oh, I know who I am more than I have ever before, and I kind of know what I want to do more than I have ever before. This feels right in a different way. Like, I loved acting, and that's not to say you can't do all of these things at once. I feel like I'm really an example of being able to do so many different things at one time that might not traditionally match together, but in a way that I never felt acting or doing anything else. I really felt called to take on more of this role, being an advocate, being an activist. And yeah, I don't think that really came until only a few years ago. And honestly, it's something I still think about all the time, like connecting to who I am and who I want to be and what is really true for me. I think that's a question we ask ourselves constantly.
There's a gap between growing up in a predominantly white community as an immigrant. I had gone through it myself, and um, ultimately becoming an advocate for these marginalized communities, right? Like, because in that gap is generally your individual journey of dealing with it, reflecting on it, finding yourself, your voice, and then deciding how and if you're going to share it, and if you're going to share it within a small community, or if you're going to amplify it in a way similar to what you're doing. So I guess I want to dig into how we kind of how that gap became so big in a way, where talk to us maybe a little bit more about your individual journey, and how it shaped some of the decisions you're making now.
Yeah. I feel like exactly what you said is so true. So many friends that I have, I mean, even my husband's Chinese, Korean, and Puerto Rican. He grew up in a predominantly white community as well. And in many ways, as individuals, you might tell your story, share your story. It might help you make bonds and connections as you become an adult and you find other people that have similar stories. And the jump from it just being kind of an anecdotal retelling within my life or a way to connect with people to, oh, this is something that I want to be a main part of my life. This is something that I want to create a platform for and work professionally in and etc. I think the jump really happened for me when I started feeling really called to honestly learn more about, because I wouldn't say, like, there's a very common phrase where you say, "I'm giving voice to the voiceless." I wouldn't necessarily say that that is an accurate depiction of how I feel my role is, because these individuals that I'm amplifying their stories and doing research into, more in depth, being able to retell their experiences, it's not necessarily that they don't have a voice, it's that no one is really listening and no one is really saying, "What do you think?" I never wanted to be someone up here on an Ivy League pedestal going to grad school and looking down saying, "Oh, I'm up here. How can I help you down there?" I wanted to say, "What's up? Like, what are you doing? What's going on with you? How can I use the platform I might have to be able to share exactly what you're saying?" And going really to the people that are experiencing it the most. Because for me, it's not necessarily like my research is in mass incarceration. And it wasn't necessarily that that was something that deeply impacted my life growing up, but it was understanding, especially the wave of the Black Lives Matter movement in 2020, really understanding the ways in which racism and mass incarceration are inextricably tied, and wanting to learn more about that. It really just comes from, like, I always loved school. I always loved learning, and that ability to just learn and hear people's stories. That's kind of what really drew me in and brought me from, this is my experience to, oh, this is something that I really want to talk more about.
You're going down a path where you're learning and researching about a part of our society with a lot of just unanswerable questions at times, right? Like, you're kind of going down a path of having lots of hard conversations and learning about a lot of the um, institutionalized ideas that are essentially um, a taint on how we run things here. And the reason I kind of asked the question this way is because you're in it, you're in the weeds. You're a good person to ask. Where do you see signs of hope when it comes to the issues that you're working through?
Yeah. I teach a weekly class at a detention center in Brooklyn. So it functions as both a jail and a prison. So there's some people that are there for really short sentences, people that are pre-trial that they don't even know how long they'll be in there, and then ultimately people that may serve long sentences in another state in a completely different facility. So I teach short courses because we never know where our students are going to end up. And these classes, when I tell you, the overwhelming joy that I feel in this classroom, it's honestly, like, indescribable. My mom's a teacher, and I think just, like, teaching is kind of, like, in my blood and in my DNA, and so I teach literature, philosophy courses, and imagine we go into their computer studio, it's about 15, 17 men. I teach on the men's side of the facility. They sit around a big table, and they start out writing their name on a name tag, and whatever they want to be called. And most of the time inside, depending on the facility, they might be called a number, they might be called their last name, but rarely do they get to be called their first name or their preferred name. And so they put that on their name tag and we play theater games. Games that I learned back when I was in undergrad. We play theater games and we kind of like break down walls. And I had two students 2 weeks ago that were sitting there not super into it, like, didn't really wanna play the games, didn't really wanna talk, didn't really wanna participate. We played our first game, this game called Name Gumbo, and after, they were laughing, smiling, reflecting, telling me why what's so special about a name? What's so special about sharing their name with someone else in the room? And in those moments, I find so much hope because at the end of the day, it's about people. Like, I feel that I could make a tangible change to an on an individual level. Thinking about trying to change an entire system can obviously be super overwhelming and you feel hopeless. But that one-on-one personal level, like looking into these guys' eyes and seeing them smile and hearing what they're learning, I think that's really where I find my hope.
I think that perspective is just so awesome and something that I think is a takeaway for a lot of the listeners. I think there are many examples of people who look at, situations from a 30,000-foot view and think, all right, well, this is broken. There's no way that we can approach this. And the way that you're kind of going at it and looking at it in terms of what's right in front of you. And getting that win that's right in front of you, I think that that perspective is incredible, and it's something that most certainly can resonate with a lot of people. At one point, did you have to kind of get yourself to that point where you realized you can make small differences? Because, like a lot of people, a lot of times head into fields with huge ambition, right? Like, I'm going to be the game changer. I'm going to, drive this rally. I'm going to, be the one to, fix everything that's been broken for years. Because you're young, you're ambitious, and you've accomplished a lot, and you saw yourself kind of already break barriers, if you will, as an actor. And then, like you said, as a kid, athletics wasn't really there, and then you became, a trainer. You went from working from the front desk to ultimately becoming a trainer. You could do a lot that you probably didn't think you could do at one point. And now, why wouldn't you think you could change the system? So talk to me about maybe your thought process going in and what shaped it to what it is today.
100% true because this is definitely a journey like anything else. Like, I mean, my experience when I started boxing, I look back on videos and the way that I thought I was killing it when I was literally a mess, like I laugh watching videos of myself. And it's funny because if you've never been a boxer or you don't know the technique, like my husband will be like, "No, you look good." And I'm like, "I was terrible. Like this is bad." And so I think honestly having that foundation of boxing boxing's a huge part of my life. It still is, even though I'm not actively training people one-on-one or group fitness training anymore. I still box twice a week with my coach. Like I love boxing is just such an integral part of my life and who I am. And having the experience of being so bad at something, but learning that step by step you can actually work toward being significantly better. I feel like I've brought that approach into so much of my life. And so similarly, when I decided, okay, I want to go back to grad school, I want to work for this program in the prison, I want to work on these things, I want to learn about these things. I really came in with just curiosity. That is what saved me from being frustrated, angry, and deterred from wanting to be a boxer. I came in just curious. Okay, what is this sport about? How do I get good at it? Step by step. And bringing that approach into everything honestly saves me so much heartache. And I mean, it's way easier said than done. There's definitely times that I compare myself to other people, wonder why I'm not doing more, wonder why I'm not further ahead. Like everyone has that 100%. But trying to just be like curious and ask for help. I email people every day that someone would say, that's crazy. They're never going to respond to you. They're never going to answer you. And you would be shocked at how many times they do. And it was just like that with boxing. I didn't know anything. And instead of being embarrassed of that, I would go to the best boxers I saw and say, hey, how do you do that? Hey, what's this about? What kind of gloves do you have? What kind of gear do you have? How much do you train? Like just asking questions. And people are so much more willing to help. People are so much more supportive and they are able to share their journey. And that has helped me so much to see, okay, I'm on the right path and to keep myself encouraged.
Yeah. No, that's a really good call out. I mean, I think people sometimes forget or get intimidated. But the truth is, you know, athletes or established athletes, people who have, built up their place in the athletic world are not the people that are going to judge you for picking up weights. Right? Those are the people who are more likely to encourage you, because they've already been down that path. And similarly in business, the people who've succeeded in business are not the ones that are going to judge you for coming up with an idea and wanting to pursue it. It's generally the people who are, sitting in the stands or in the bleachers who are the ones that are, not going to answer you or give you the information that you need. So that's a really good call out for everybody. Um, as I think through this, I want to learn a little bit more about you and your community. So you're married. Tell me a little bit about your husband. Keep it as high level as you want. But the reason I want to ask about this is because given what you're doing, I have to imagine you have a strong support system. We already gave your mom a shout out. We'll give her another shout out. But talk to me about your husband a little bit and how he's played a role in terms of supporting you with everything that you've got on your plate.
Yeah, my husband's name's Richard. He's honestly the best. We're best friends. Like every day we'll be like sitting for dinner and I'm like, wow, we just get to have a sleepover with our best friend every day forever. Like love this for us. And I totally agree. Having his support is really everything. My parents, like I said, growing up, super, super close. And my mom is definitely also that absolute rock for me. If you can't tell just from this, I'm a very chatty girl. I like to share my feelings. I like to talk about it. I like to talk it through. And having people in my life that I can really just vent out how I'm feeling, think through a plan. My best friend Talia is also someone that I'm sending voice notes to like literally every single day. And having those foundational people that you can really rely on their opinion and feedback and support. I mean, I think that's everything. Richard has been with me from being a truly struggling actor, from the best roles that I got to the biggest heartbreaks. And seen me progress from there, like all the way through. We've been together going on almost 8 years. And so we've got married 2 years ago. And so he's seen me from struggling actor, starting to do fitness. What's this boxing thing? I was like a spin instructor first. What's going on with boxing? I think I want to go back to grad school. Like all of these moments, never once did he say, oh, I don't think you should do that. Or are you sure you want to do that? Do you not want to pick a safer choice or an easier choice? And we were even talking before we got on to record how he even will do episodes of my podcast with me. Like he's right there wanting to support me through everything. And that is definitely the kind of partner that I need because I do so many different things. And when I feel passionate about something, I think, oh, yeah, why don't I try that? And he's always there for me. So it's crucial to have that support system.
When you think about going into these prisons and jails, and like you said, not every interaction is going to be super pleasant. You're probably going to see some things, you're probably going to hear some things, and sometimes it could probably be a little deflating. Well, I mean, I'm kind of looking at you, and I feel like you're also someone who's probably hard to deflate. But still, I'm gonna go on a whim here and see that there's got to be some circumstances that you've come across that are probably a little deflating. Talk to me about how you've shaped your perspective around not necessarily letting it bog you down, or just understanding how to keep showing up regardless.
Yeah. As we were, as I was just talking about my husband, the first time when I said, "Yeah, I think I'm gonna go into these prisons and teach classes," he was super freaked out about that. He was like, "Okay, like, is there a corrections officer in there with you?" Which there isn't. "And is there what's it gonna be like? And are you gonna be safe?" And he was, like, really freaked out about that. And even today, he's always like, "Is everything okay?" I mean, it's something that's like it's not common. It's not the norm. It's not necessarily what you expect your wife to just decide to do one day. So for me, I think I mean, I'm really lucky that I've had overwhelmingly positive experiences. It is not something that I'm allowed to know or should know about any of my students, why they're inside, how long their sentence might be, what they did to get in there, whether they're innocent or not. These are not questions that we're even able to ask or discuss in class, and it's something that we have pretty firm boundaries on. So students might bring up something if we're talking about, like, right now I'm teaching Antigone, so we're talking about what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong. People might bring up their experiences and then we kind of shift the conversation. Okay, can't really talk about that right now. So also I think that helps with me not feeling um it keeps it pretty positive because we're not talking about, you know, these parents that may never get to see their children again, or these people that are in there that may have done something that on the outside I might feel horrified by, but inside that has no bearing on my experience as their teacher in the classroom. What I would say is kind of the toughest thing is just the way in which you have to kind of shift yourself and modify your behavior to just be able to get inside. So if you hear a corrections officer saying something that maybe doesn't really sit well with you. I mean, I'm literally going to school for human rights. Like my goal is for these individuals inside to be treated as humanely as possible with dignity and respect. And I might hear something that doesn't really make me feel good that, on the outside world I might say, "Hey, that's not okay to say." But I'm not gonna be able to get inside of the facility if I say something. My impact being able to get inside and teach is gonna be more important than saying, "Hey, I don't like that you said that." So I think for me, that's kind of the toughest pill to swallow. You just have to kind of smile and grit your teeth and bear it and just get inside and keep your volunteer status and make sure that you stay smiling, because you never want the facility itself to not let you in again.
Yeah. No, that's a really good note, and it's something for us to think about. And I didn't even think about that, but those are probably sound guidelines that need to be in place for that kind of arrangement. So that makes perfect sense. I want to ask you a little bit about the book that you co-authored. Tell us a little bit about how that came to be, and what the process was like for you as you were going through it.
Yeah, so I co-authored an ebook called Activating Your Vocabulary, and really it just came from I used to have a weekly anti-racism newsletter from about 2020 to 2022, 2023. And I would write every single week about a different topic related to race, racism, marginalized communities and groups. And it was honestly incredible. That's really where my love for research kind of reemerged, because I hadn't done that in, a long time, maybe since undergrad, maybe even since high school. And so within that, I kind of had this online glossary dictionary that I started writing that was just a bunch of different definitions to terms that we were hearing a lot of kind of buzzwords, whether it was in the media, whether it was on social, things that people were starting to say and use that weren't necessarily in your everyday conversations before. And I wanted people to have a place where they could go and say, oh, AAPI, what's that mean? I'm seeing that in the press. Oh, Asian American Pacific Islander. Okay, so what is that? And then learn more about it. And a question I was getting a lot, for example, was what's the difference between race, ethnicity, nationality? Like, how are those things different? And so having a place where I could bring together all of these different terms online, that's kind of where it started. And then I wanted it a little bit more polished, a little bit more accurate. I wanted to have proper footnotes and citations and where people could learn more. And that's kind of what led to authoring that book, so that people would just be able to have a resource for those conversations.
That's awesome. That's what did you when it comes to that process? I mean, you're talking about a very delicate subject ultimately, right? And a lot of times when you're talking about delicate subjects and you're writing on delicate subjects, there is room for asking yourself, who gave me the right to have this stage ultimately, right? There's a little bit of imposter syndrome, but there's also like probably some doubt because there's so many other people who have opinions about this very same subject. So talk to me about if that thought went through your mind at times and how you dealt with that.
I think as a woman of color especially, and not just anecdotally, but based on the data, based on the research, women of color more than any other demographic tend to collect certifications and degrees and experience to kind of validate what they want to say and what they want to talk about. Women of color make up the largest population of those that are seeking higher education and better degrees, because constantly want to say, oh, what I'm saying is real. It's backed by evidence. It's backed by this. And these are my certifications and these are my qualifications. And I think that my entire life, I've been a shining example of that. I always wanted to have the data, have the information, have the research. I didn't share opinions without saying, oh, this is where I got the information. This is the citation, because I think I always wanted to be believed and taken seriously. And so that is just something that I practiced my entire life, for better or for worse, to just always back up the things that I had to say. So coming to this point, I think it's a combination of knowing that I do have the data, the evidence, the background, the education to speak from a place of knowing, but also understanding that lived experience is just as valid as experience that you get in a book. And that wasn't something that I would have been able to confidently say, but actually in one of my classes at Columbia, a professor was saying this, and I feel like it kind of gave me permission for the first time to say, oh, all those things that I felt growing up, that I started putting language to as I got older, that's just as valid as something that I read in this paper or in this book, or something that was researched, or that, that was done in a control group. And so it definitely, there has been imposter syndrome, but it's also, if I'm not going to believe in myself, who's going to? No one's going to come and just say, "Yeah, this girl is right. We should believe her. We should listen to her." No one's going to do that if I'm not the one saying I have something to say that I think's worth hearing. No one else is going to listen. And I've kind of had to just say, I'm not going to have imposter syndrome not that I don't, because it's there, but I will try my best to say I have something to say, it's worth listening to, and try to push away from that as much as I can.
Man, I have so much I want to say on that, but I think you're so spot on because, similar to you, I've written and authored a couple of books. One of them was a memoir, and so the memoir, no one can really question it because it's just me talking about me. But then my second piece was more of a thought leadership piece, and parts of it were more so taking jabs at corporate institutions, so different kind of institutions. And I talked about this one example when I was working in financial services at a bank. And Every year, the bank would create a little club for their top performers. And I had made this club, and it was about 15 of us. And in the book, I talk about how, we were given a trip. I forgot where it was, but we were getting on a bus to go to this trip, and it looked like me and just a Connecticut lacrosse team. And we get back from this trip that it took us on, and then the upcoming year, they announced promotions, and everyone on the bus got promoted except for me. And I didn't understand because I was a top performer and so on and so forth. And I talk about in the book how I went to my managing director's office and I asked him to call out if there was any difference between me and the other 14 people, and he couldn't. And then I called it out because it was common in the industry, where you didn't really see people from underrepresented communities necessarily get the same traction or momentum in their careers as other people. And I had that hard conversation. But then I'm writing my book, and there's still a part of me that's wondering, you know, can I speak about this lived experience as being a truth, in especially within the bounds of an institution? And ultimately left that job and, found a job that was a lot more, um, it was a lot more conducive to diversity and equity. I mean, you know all about that. But it was something that became a hard reality. But writing about it, publicizing it, it's crazy that there's still an element of self doubt, despite the fact that it's a lived truth. So I appreciate you sharing that because it's definitely something that I think about frequently, in the platform that I've been trying to run and cultivate. Hey all, it's me, Bishoy. As a marathon runner and endurance athlete, I've come to understand the importance of properly fueling your body for preparation and recovery. Every day, you get a shot at success. How you start your day typically paints a picture of what the rest of the day will look like. Start your day with a super convenient, healthy, and delicious nutritional win. Meal 1 by Creatures of Habit. Overnight oatmeal packed with 30 grams of plant-based protein, chia, flax, and pumpkin seeds. Vitamin D3, omega-3s, a probiotic, and digestive enzymes, made in under 1 minute. Stop wasting time or worrying about what to eat as your first meal of the day. Start with meal 1. Visit creaturesofhabit.com, creatures spelled with a K, and use code MILE40 for 15% off a one-time purchase or the first subscription order payment. So all this context is absolutely incredible. And I love what you're doing, and I love the energy that you're radiating. And I'm so excited for people to learn more about you. And the context in the background is really helpful. I want to ask you if at some point in your journey, anytime along the way, there was a particularly difficult moment for you, anything that you had gone through in your life, whether it was personal or, through your family or anything like that, that kind of helped build some of your resilience and determination. Look, at the end of the day, like you need that shell to do what you're doing. So I want to kind of ask if there's anything along the way that really stands out for you.
Interestingly enough, I don't think I've ever really been asked a question like this before. But the first thing that came to my mind is kind of my journey with my hair, which will make sense. I'll kind of paint a picture for you. So when I was a little kid, like I said, grew up in a predominantly white community, had a super curly afro. Like my hair always grew out versus like down. And so had this really, really curly hair. And I do honestly remember loving my hair when I was really young. And then I remember things like kids putting as many twigs and leaves and stuff in my hair as they could without me noticing, and me sitting down in the classroom and kids behind me laughing and reaching back and finding like stuff in my hair and them thinking that was funny, and slowly feeling, oh, my hair is weird. It's not normal. People reaching out and touching my hair without consent, not really understanding this is a part of my body, and slowly feeling like this was just a thing that was really weird that I didn't want anymore. And my mom remembers me sitting in front of kind of my vanity that was in my childhood bedroom and just crying and saying, I feel so ugly because of my hair. And so eventually I started getting extensions when I was maybe 12 or 13. And now here I am at 31 years old, and I've literally never worn my natural hair again. So I had extensions starting from that time, started damaging my hair, ruining my hair, started getting bald spots in my hair, had to switch to ponytail extensions. And then eventually, through this time, I was also cultivating my career as an actor. And when you're an actor, your agents tell you, these are the kind of roles that you'll get. This is what your headshot should look like. And this is what you should look like. And this is the kind of person that you're going to be, because these are the kind of roles that you're going to get. And for me, I was very much the pretty popular girl, the mean girl, the girl that's in high school that, I mean, this is when I was younger. I think I still look young, but maybe not high school young. But it was the girl in high school that's going to be this kind of way. And apparently that person had a certain kind of hair. And so I was always trying to fit into that mold. And then kind of moving forward, exactly around the time where I started speaking, using my voice a lot more, when I co-founded activism, when I decided to go back to grad school. This is the first time in my life I started wearing braids. And at that time, my agents were saying, you're never going to get roles by wearing braids. That's not the kind of character that you're going to play. I got braids. Literally a few weeks later, I booked a recurring role in Succession. It was like not the most recent season of Succession, this the season before on HBO. Book that role. My character's wearing braids. That was actually when I decided to stop acting, around that time. But book that role with my braids. Continue to wear braids. Honestly, have never felt like more like myself, and more just, I don't even think about my hair anymore. It used to be something I thought about hundreds of times a day. What does my hair look like? Is it frizzy? Is it this? Is it that? I don't even think about my hair anymore. And I think that journey, which so many women of color especially can relate to, so many Black women can relate to, I think having, what it really showed me was being able to tap into what I really want and to be who I really am gave me a freedom that I never thought was possible. I never realized how much mental space it was taking worrying about what I looked like until it wasn't there. And I thought, wow, I have so much more free time in a day because I'm not freaking out thinking about what I look like. And even though, I mean, there are so many other things that I've been through in my life that I could point to and say, oh, that really made me, stronger, or, that was a really tough thing that I've gone through. I think this is something that literally has followed me my entire life. And now I can't really say I'm on the other side of it. It definitely is something I still grapple with, but having that kind of realization, that trusting myself, and like the thing I wanted to do all along when I was asking my agents, oh, do you think I could get braids, ended up being something that was so freeing, and really has shown me, okay, I got to kind of follow my gut a little bit more, because that's really made me feel most like myself.
Taylor, that's such a great call out. Like that is because it transcends everything, right? Like that is a childhood experience that has gone on with you throughout your lifetime, because it represents so much more than just your hair,
Of
right?
course,
And
yeah.
that's what people need to take away from this. And it just kind of reminded me as a I was an immigrant. I was born abroad, but I'm also the parent. I'm also the son of first generation immigrants. And first generation immigrants, when you're dealing with an elementary school student, this isn't what's top of mind for them, because they're probably thinking about how to just survive in this new country, that they're not expecting you to come home and talk about the type of backlash that you're getting for something like your hair or for your accent or for the lunch that you brought because it may be different than everybody else's lunch, or for your skin color, or for whatever it may be that just isn't mainstream, which a lot of, immigrant, first generation immigrant children deal with. And, you know, similar to you, I've had my own experiences, which again, at childhood, have kind of really laid the foundation for everything in your adult life. And, I have a young girl right now with another on the way. And I don't know if kids are in your future, but I do wonder how one day I'll take the learnings of those lessons and handle them when my child comes home for whatever reason, and kind of instill the learnings of that. And I don't know if this is a good question to ask you or not, but you know how would you now handle that with a child of your own one day, given what you've
Yeah.
learned?
This is something me and my husband talk about all the time. Hopefully a child is in our future in the next few years. And so especially for both of us having been bullied and had these experience as children, we're like it's one of the main things we think about for when we have, a child or children someday. I mean, I even think about, okay, what if I have a child that has hair just like mine and I can't hide my hair and never show it and then tell them, "Oh, your hair is beautiful. Mine sucks, but yours is good." Like I can't say that. But I do think that, I mean, I was really lucky. Like I said, my mom is a teacher and my mom has always been like, and even like my dad was the stay-at-home parent for most of like when I was really little until I was, in elementary school and with me every single day and is like absolutely also super there for me for all of these things. So I'm really lucky that my parents were really in tune with me and did really validate, my experience and really see me. One thing that I find is, I think my parents thought it was the best thing to do at the time. They would always say, they're just jealous of you. You're smarter than them, you're prettier than them, like you're the best and like they're just jealous of you. That was kind of their go-to. And at the time, yeah, that's great. Like I'm 7 years old and I'm like everyone's jealous of me because I'm so pretty and smart and better than everyone. But as an adult, I think what that kind of told me when I was getting older was that good things can only happen for me if bad things are happening to other people. They must be jealous of me. They must be dumber than me. They must be less successful than me in order for me to have good things. And so I think for, every child, I think every parent wants their child to do better than them. And this is even something I've spoken to my parents about. And so I hope I could learn from that. And for my future child, instead of going there, I could say, other people can have good things and so can you. And they might be jealous of you, but they might not. Maybe they're just mean. Like maybe they're just a mean person. Like there's so many reasons to explain why these things happen, but other people can have good things and you can just because you deserve good things. You're a good person. And I think coming at that from a little bit of a different angle is something that, who knows? I feel like people talk a lot before they have kids and like, I'm going to be the perfect parent. So who knows? Ask me in a few years how it goes.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, kids are unpredictable, and like there's no instruction manual. But on the flip side of that, and this is always something that runs through my mind, when you think about some of the determining factors that have built your fortitude, strength, resilience, those experiences ultimately helped build that. Where as much as you want to prevent your kids from having to deal with them, you almost like this is where I struggle personally, and my daughter's only 2, so it's a little early for this, but and I definitely don't want her getting bullied on the playground. But at the same time, I do wonder, now that you and I are second generation immigrant families, right? Like, where are we going to be able to instill that kind of life experience in our children where they're going to be able to, summon that strength as they develop and get older? And if you don't have an answer, it's fine. But it's definitely something that I think about, and
Yeah.
something that runs through my mind.
Yeah, I think about that I absolutely think about that because there were things that I had. I mean, even in terms of like financial security, when I was a kid, that was something that I was always really stressed about. I was always asking my parents, "Are we okay? Can I buy this? Are we okay? Is everything okay?" Like, I didn't know if we were financially in a good position. And I tell my husband now, like, we can't make our kid feel like they need to really value money because if you have more money than your parents had, that's obviously great. That's what your parents want for you. They want their kids to do better. But I'm like, I can't make my kid have the same value in money, for example, that I have because I grew up stressed about money, which also was like a negative thing. But in some ways, it's positive because now I'm really conscious of my spending. If I have a child that never has to worry about money, then what's that going to look like when they get older? Are they just gonna be, like, spoiled and not care? Like, I feel like, especially second generation kids are really thinking about these things. And I'm so grateful for social media, honestly, because I come across TikToks and like Instagram reels of people with these same questions talking about what they do with their kids. And I'm really grateful for that because I think, okay, like a lot of us are kind of asking ourselves these questions. And I think at the end of the day, it's kind of exactly what you said. Kids are unpredictable. You obviously are not really sure what kind of child you're going to get. But also, if you I think just like telling stories about your childhood, even though I didn't have the same experience, for example, as my parents immigrating, them telling me the stories of their experience, I think that makes an impact. Even if you don't live it yourself, hearing the stories of those that came before you, I think you can still kind of hold a piece of those lessons with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Man, I could talk about that topic for days because thing about it is you're right. Like there is no answer. And everyone has their own lived experience ultimately, and the moments and experiences that will shape them. Um, all right. As we round things out, before I ask one more serious question, you mentioned being on Succession. And I wanted to go back to that right away, but I figured let me keep the dialogue flowing. Was Succession your personal, like, coolest acting gig, or did you have anything else that we should know that wasn't mentioned in your bio?
I definitely think doing the Broadway National Tour of Motown was my coolest
Okay.
because I was a swing. So I covered 3 roles and so at a moment's notice, sometimes mid-show, if someone wasn't feeling well or their voice was hoarse or whatever it might be, or I could like have a scheduled swing on. Like in Boston, my then fiance came to see me and a bunch of our friends. So it was scheduled that I would go on, but usually it was just randomly, "Oh, this girl doesn't feel well, you're on tonight." And sometimes it was a role that I had never done before, just for the first time, you're playing this role. You haven't practiced it in 8 months, so, like, hope you remember it. So that was kind of the funnest role that I think I ever did. But when I did Succession, it was actually a big reflecting moment for me because so many people were congratulating me. My character's name was June. I was in 2 episodes. I was originally contracted for 4, but then TV changes all the time. So I did 2 episodes, but they still paid me for 4. So love that for me. And I was getting so much like praise from people. You did it. You're on HBO. And I actually took that moment and sat back and thought, this actually wasn't why I started acting. It wasn't to play a character. I was basically myself. I was like a New York girl. Like it wasn't a huge, acting jump for me. And I thought, am I really putting myself through all of this to play a role that's like basically like myself? Like I
Huh.
always say the highlight of my acting career was playing Snoopy in Your Good
Huh.
Man Charlie Brown in 7th
Yeah.
grade because being a tap dancing dog, like that's what I signed up for. Like I'm here to have fun. I'm here to
I
like do
love that.
ridiculous things and like have a good time. And I wasn't really getting roles like that. There aren't that many, but like I wasn't really getting fun roles. Like I wanted to have fun. I want to cry. I want to scream. I want to sing. I want to like tap dance number in a dog costume. Like that's what I loved about acting. And that's just not what I was getting. I was getting
Yeah.
like basically you play yourself and
Yeah.
that's not really that fun.
Yeah.
Like that wasn't exciting to me. So actually that was the moment that I thought, yeah, I think I'm good. I don't but
Wow.
I always say when I'm like 60 or 70 or 80, I'm going to go back to acting and just play like the grandma on every TV show.
I
So
love that.
but potentially someday I'll go back.
I love that. I'm so glad that I asked. Uh, that's so cool. All right. As we round things up out here, talk to us a little bit about activism, the company that you founded. Talk to us about when it was incepted, and we can close things off with a little bit about what your vision is for the future. Right? What in your mind would make it successful? What in your mind would help you meet what you originally set out for when you began it?
Yeah. So I co-founded activism in 2020 with my friend Kira West, and kind of our vision for activism, especially in 2020 when, we were all remote, everyone was in lockdown, was to just create a space to have conversations at the height of the Black Lives Matter movement and to really just break down what was going on and create a space where people could have conversations. Social media was so overwhelming. My followers on Instagram doubled within a few months just because I was talking anecdotally about what I thought and sharing resources kind of organically on social. That became a platform where were going for information. Then I started my weekly newsletter, and from there we wanted to create even more of a space to have conversations. And our very first virtual program had over 100 participants that we met every week on Zoom, and we just had conversations about what was going on in the world while also providing resources to learn more. So we would have something to read, watch, listen to, support, and share. Those were kind of our 5 action steps within the program. And we would provide these resources to anyone that wanted to participate. So it might be a podcast, a video, a movie, an article, some research, all these different things. And then we'd come together and talk about it. And obviously, we're no longer in a super virtual world. A lot more has gone back to in person and things like that now in 2024. So activism hasn't really been what it was during that time, but obviously I'm so grateful for it because it really helped me be able to navigate having these tough conversations. I would say it's pretty rare to almost impossible for me to feel uncomfortable having a conversation around a traditionally uncomfortable topic because of being able to mediate and participate in those conversations. It really allowed me to find a way to conduct myself and share my thoughts and also receive opinions that, if you're making the space for people to ask questions and have conversations, it really opens you up to being like, I'm not going to be offended and I'm not going to be scared because that's what this space is for. And so I'm so grateful for that because it's obviously gotten me to where I am now. The evolution of that, I think, became kind of my podcast because that's where I've moved on to having more conversations in these kinds of topics. And I think you asked me a second part, what I foresee for the future.
Yeah, like what your vision is for the future ultimately. I don't want to necessarily position it as how you would deem it a success because I think even getting it started is successful in and of its own. So I don't think it's and it's not really like a metric based type of evaluation. But what is your vision with regards to what you're building?
Yeah, absolutely. I when I decided to pursue my master's, I kind of just did it knowing that I wanted to learn more, but not really knowing what that was going to lead me to, and hoping that between the people that I met and the experiences I had on campus that I would be able to forge more of a clear path. And I'm very grateful that that really has happened. The mentors that I've met and the community that I found through grad school has really allowed me to kind of shape my vision a little bit more. And for me, I mean, my research, I'm just at the beginning stages of it. I'm writing my thesis this year, and it's on, as you said in the beginning of the episode, it's on access to outdoor recreation for women of color in New York correctional facilities. Women in general make up only about 10% of the incarcerated population, so they're not really discussed as much as men that are incarcerated. And so I really wanted to, I taught a class in a women's prison last semester, and that was my first time really having a class focused on a female population. And I'm really excited to start this research, to have interviews, to be able to learn more about how kind of my 2 passions, which is mass incarceration reform, abolition, and movement and fitness and sport, how those come together and how women inside do or don't have access to that, outdoor movement and how that affects their time upon release. Are they getting time outside? Are they participating in sports and fitness and activities in their communities? And I'm hoping to continue to find a platform to be able to bring those two things in continuous conversation, racial justice and wellness, continue to have those conversations about them. I love to talk. And so I'm hoping to continue to just get to share this research, bring more awareness, learn more, and continue to grow that research, whether that is in the form of writing a book about it, whether that's in the form of talking more specifically about that on my podcast. I'm not exactly sure, but I know that barely anyone has done research on this, like exercise, fitness, sports, and how it relates to incarcerated populations. This research is like, no one's really doing it. No one's really talking about it. So I'm just excited to kind of learn more and see where that takes me.
Thank you, Taylor. Your work is so important. Like, and that is something that, as I hear you speak, I hear, the passion, the excitement, and the intention behind it. And I know your work is important, but I think it's important for me to share it because, to your point, like there hasn't been much research around it, and you're doing the work that needs to be done. And I think that's incredibly special. And I think your story as a whole is very special. And one of the things that I'm going to take away from this conversation is you calling out your experience with your hair as a child. And that's what I want to leave the listeners with as we kind of wind things down here. Because people don't know, I don't necessarily want to call it a scar, but I can't think of a better word. But people don't know the scars that others are walking around with, 20 years later. And it's that scar that, essentially kind of laid a foundation to shape you and your mindset and build your fortitude, strength, resilience. And now you've built an entire platform to make the world around you better. And so thank you. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing with me today.
Thanks so much for having me.